you don't follow your husband because he's, always done it right. But in the same sense, the husband doesn't love you like Christ loved the church because you always deserve it. And that's the idea, that husbands respond to your wives because you love Jesus. Wives respond to your husbands because you love Jesus.
So the three of us are dads. I'm earliest in the journey. I guess like you're middle, you're maybe a little bit later, right? So I obviously know the most.
Absolutely.
I'm the doe-eyed dad here. I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old and then another one on the way. I watch sitcoms sometimes. I mean, I don't really watch them, but I'm aware of them. And a lot of the time, you'll see that the dads in there are mainly just the comic relief. And it makes me laugh, but at the same time, it seems like almost unanimously in a lot of like modern sitcoms, the dad's kind of dumb. He's kind of incompetent. He's only really good for like doing his job. And then when he gets home, he's kind of lost and aimless. Is that a caricature you think you see? And the first thing I want to ask you is that fair?
It is fair, but here's, I guess, when I look at this issue, and I've observed that before, I do a comparison, right? So when I go back into the days of Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, even the Dennis the Menace show, all those old good black and whites, you can even look at Andy Griffith, right? The fathers were portrayed very differently. They were the ones who were the kind of the wise one. If you had a question, it wasn't that mom didn't help, but you went to the father. And what happened is, as you progress through media and what you observe, you go to Good Times, Sanford and Sons. You go through, shows that were monumentally not necessarily great, but echoes of the time, like Three's Company, into Modern Family, into Family Guy, into what you see today, and there's no doubt been a change. But here's what I would kind of throw out maybe to a discussion is I believe that change mimics a cultural change, not just a change in society from a TV perspective, but a change in what our culture has become and why there was the activism toward painting fathers as the goofballs, right? Because I remember watching, clips of shows like the Roseanne show, the Roseanne Barr show. And Goodman there, John Goodman, he was painted as the guy who would lose it. And Roseanne would lose it too. But in the reality was, it never seemed to be there was a one calming force, right? And so while the shows we watch nowadays, we try to filter everything through VidAngel, and we don't watch a lot of sitcoms anymore. I do know sitcoms today still portray the husband as the kind of the goofball.
I grew up watching, my whole family would watch The Simpsons my whole life, and the literal dumbest character on the show by far, except for the guy Barney, who's like a drunk, and that's what he's known for, is the dad. And very common thing. What do you think? Well, what changed that caused Hollywood to start to reflect that? You think this is just like a dereliction of duty on the part of dads, husbands, or what is different?
I don't know if it's a dereliction of duty. It could be that. But I just think, generally speaking, what society and culture in America especially pushes is you can go to, sexes are equal, right, and all these things, and the ladies are portrayed as, equal, and they are equal in the eyes of God. There's no doubt about that. But it's really demeaning, and I think that's why they do this, right? I think it's fair in the fact that I have to be silly with my kids, right? I think that's fair and do that to be fun and that. But when it's viewed as you're the dumb guy and the one that you're catching all the jokes because you're just this imbecile all the time. And I'll tell you, as a father, that kind of hurts me because I try not to be that. But I think culture is pushing against the fact that the father is so important in the home, and whether they're doing this on purpose, I don't know. But I feel like that's the case, right? The father is such important, the leadership in the home, and they're kind of trying to take that away. And I don't think it's so much that the dad is being, not doing what he's supposed to do. Certainly, that's true. I mean, there's dads that aren't doing the things they need to do, not being the husbands they need to be, not being the fathers. But I think ultimately the culture is just trying to force the change by itself.
Yeah, I would offer that it's not a overnight thing. As we look from the 40s to the 50s to the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so forth, There is no doubt, and in our culture today, we're at least on the fifth wave of feminism, if I'm not mistaken, the fifth wave. And so you go from everything to women can't own land, to women can't vote, to, women's suffrage and things along those lines over time. But what we have seen is in that same vein, especially stemming from the 60s and the 70s, was this idea of we're the same, right? And to Billy's point, yes, we are in the eyes of God when it comes to salvation. That's not a question. But we're not the same when it comes to divine design, when it comes to God-ordained function and within the home. And what happened was over time is the loud voices of the protest led to a quieting of the family norms. And so what's happened is the silent majority gave way to the loud minority. And over time, media, I don't know if they reflected that, right? That's always a bit, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did media reflect that change, or did media drive that change? And I'm not sure in any of my research I've ever concluded one way or the other. But what I can say is it is absolutely a reflection of an ideology, and that is a diminishing of the father's role in the home and elevating the reality that family doesn't really need a goofball, because now instead of 4 kids, she's got 5 because she's raising the husband. And it really bothers me today, I'll be real with you guys, when I hear a wife or hear someone else say, oh, you have 3 children. And they say, well, with Joe, it feels like 4.
Yeah.
Or Aaron would say with 5. And she doesn't say that. But here's why that language is playing into the dumbing down of the dad. And it's when men are spoken down to, it's really weird. Men are so, if somebody else will do it, we'll typically sit back. If somebody else will assume the role of responsibility, we'll typically let them. That's typical. And that's why, I've heard individuals say within the church, ladies, you've got to understand, if you force the issue of leading in the church, men in America today, not always, but in America today, will back off and say, well, okay, do it.
Yeah, I see like a good-hearted man. Sometimes this will happen where like a lot of husbands, you can see or even hear them say things like, well, I mean, she's just really good at it. She's very competent in leading this or that and this and that. And then like over time, he kind of gets phased out a little bit and he just becomes like the wallet.
The playful.
Or
the wallet, And I think that's been a cultural change.
Yeah.
Be it the demise of the American family, be it more kids being raised in single-parent homes, be it really father's absence from the home. But what I do know is it's trying to dumb down the idea that the father in the home is necessary. The father in the home has something wise to bring to the table, not just a paycheck. And I do believe it was a concerted effort. I don't think it was on accident.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the sitcoms, it's in the shows because, and they say this about things that make you laugh. They make you laugh because they're at least partially true. Like people will see that and they see their own dad or they see their own grandfather, whoever it may be. And man, that's such a sad thing. Let's say there's a dad right now that goes, "Ooh, I am that caricature," or maybe a wife that says, "I've reduced my husband to being that kind of a caricature," whatever it may be. Or maybe there's someone that's raised in a home like that, and they just kind of thought that was the norm when it really shouldn't be that way. How do you help men to take the role that they're supposed to take?
Well, coming from a household that I didn't have that, so for me, putting myself around people that were that, or they were in the process of doing that with their children now, or had that in the past, helped me a lot. Me and my wife both come from broken homes. And so we didn't have that strong family unit there to look and say, hey, I can look to that and I can mimic that and go forward. Steve Miner, great friend of both of ours, was one of those guys really instrumental. Joe Wells, there's a lot. Mentorship's a big part of it. Surrounding yourself with people that do that, but also just biblically understanding what your role is. Like to me, I know that I am called to be the leader of my home. And to pass that off to me, would be, I'm going against what God, wants in the home. And ultimately, I also cannot pass that off on my wife. I can't do that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and again, I don't know, it could be also because of a raising that they had as well, that I grew up in a home where my mother was the aggressive one. She was the one that my dad was there and quiet and worked and did all the things, but my mom was the one who kind of drove everything. And to grow up around that and see that, it's hard to come out of that, right? But you have to go back. I think mentorship ultimately is really where you need to go, but biblically understanding the role that you have in the home, not just to be the leader, but to provide spiritually, to provide financially, to be the protector. Men are physically stronger than women. I'm built that way. I'm built the one to need to be the protector of the home. So understanding biblically my role as a husband and a father.
I see a lot of the time husbands and wives will view like taking care of the home as just like a general list of take care of this, and not like here's what the husband or the man is supposed to do and here's what the woman is supposed to do. And a lot of the time when it just gets all mixed together and it's just a bunch of things to do, what ends up happening is, well, who's better? Who do we think is better at taking care of this, that, that? And then next thing you know, there's a husband who's taking a back seat in so many areas where he can't pass off that job. That's something only he can do. That's such an important point to make.
From the standpoint of what do you do, right? If there's a wife who's going to watch this or listen to this who may be in that belittling or diminishing her husband category, or a husband who's failed to step up, right? That's the question. I would offer this. The underlying fundamental concept is there's surrender that has to happen in both of their lives to God. Because if I surrender to God as a man, then I surrender to his will. Not just to the gospel, but I surrender to his will for men. I surrender to his will for husbands when it comes to fatherhood, right? And if I live outside of that, I'm not living a surrendered life. But on the same side, for a wife, the surrender for her is the way she responds to her husband, the way she responds to her children. And I would simply offer this. If we would come to understand that the differences between men and women are not ugly, but we embrace them as divine. You know, I talk on this, and I talk about the bodily design is different. God didn't make men to bear children and to feed children, but God did make men typically to be stronger, more muscle mass. But on the flip side of that, typically women have more fat, and that's not an ugly thing. That is because God designed it with a purpose, right? And in the home, it's designed the same way. So what needs to happen in those situations? I would offer surrender. Now, does that mean as a man, I've got to do the John Wayne manly stuff? No, because society will set oftentimes what men are supposed to do. Biblically speaking, what am I supposed to do? Provide, protect, right? I'm supposed to teach in my home. I'm supposed to love my wife the way that Christ loved the church. I'm supposed to raise my children in a way that doesn't turn their heart, doesn't exasperate them, right? Away from God and turn them away from me. So my temperament comes into play. All those are biblical expectations. From a wife's standpoint, she's supposed to love her husband, love her children, be workers and managers at home. Now, does that mean she can't work outside of the home? I'm not suggesting that, but I believe the Proverbs 31 woman, who we oftentimes will point to, she did not fail her home for the sake of bringing in an income. So we've got to be balanced with that, right? We've got to understand the home cannot be an afterthought. Neither can an appropriate God-honoring relationship between a husband and a wife. And so if the husband is being belittled, that's not God-honoring. If the wife is being belittled, that's not God-honoring. But in the same side, it's okay to respect both mutually and say, we're not the same in our function, in our design. We're the same when it comes to being heirs of salvation, heirs of the kingdom. But what if we embraced our differences and celebrated those and understand that the home works better when it works according to what God established?
I love the idea of framing that as surrender, because a lot of the time, and I've heard wives say this, well, it's because if I let him do this, or if you tell him he needs to take care of this and only he can do this, he's just not gonna do a good job or whatever it may be. And they have to say, you have to get yourself in a mindset where you can just say, I'm gonna trust that this is meant to be his job, and I'm gonna support him in his growth in this area. Like maybe there's a wife thinking, my husband would be terrible if he did this thing that I've been doing instead of him this whole time. Well, I mean, it's his job. And at some point, you've got to do things in a surrendered way to Jesus.
And I'll say this, and it's your audience, not mine. Living with a critical approach to your spouse is a quick way to build resentment. And so if he feels criticized all the time, you didn't do it right, you didn't do it my way, you should have done it this way, you know what he's going to do? He's going to throw his hands up. And a wife is going to get frustrated when she finds her husband pulling away. On the same side, the wife who's always criticized, even the one who loves the Lord, will still do her best to do what she's supposed to do, but she will have resentment,
Yeah.
and intimacy will be cut down.
Yeah.
So in all of this, the question is, do you want your marriage to thrive, or do you want your marriage to be culturally acceptable?
Yeah, he's not doing this, but at the same time, you convinced him that he could never do it the
That's
right
right.
way.
So a guy's
Ugh.
going to throw his hands up and walk away.
Bad cycle.
Yep.
Okay. As we close, that was a clip from my full conversation with Joe Wells and Billy Palmer. Do you agree with what we had to say about dads, about parenting, about families, about roles? Let me know what you think. Especially check out the Hey Joe podcast on YouTube and Kyle Publications, KAIO. Joe Wells' book publication group. So please check that out. He has many books. They're all amazing. There's other books, other authors as well under Kyle Publications. So be sure to check that out. The links for all that will be in the description here below. Love you very much. Let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting on Patreon. God bless you. Lord willing, I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.